Hi students, I'm Una.
And I'm Scott.
I'm a UK OET teacher.
I'm also an OET teacher from the UK.
We've been teaching students to pass their exams for many years.
And now we're excited to help you pass your exams too.
This is the Swoosh English OET Podcast.
Let's get started.
Are you struggling with your OET exam preparation?
Are you unsure how to reach your target score of a grade A or B? Let Swoosh English help you get there.
Go to www.swooshenglish.com or click the link in the description for your free OET complete guide to writing.
Everything you need to know to pass your OET writing step by step. Go to www.swooshenglish.com or click on the link in the description below. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Swoosh English Podcast. My name's Scott.
And my name is Una.
And today we're going to go through our method and overview of the OET speaking examination.
Yeah, we're going to get into the speaking tasks, those role plays, go through an overview exactly of what you have to do, go through the scoring criteria, and then just generally talk about what you should do and how things should proceed on the day of your exam.
Yeah, so lots of interesting information that you can take away from this podcast today for OET speaking, because no doubt you probably have a lot of questions to do, you have a lot of queries, you've got a lot of worries about it, given that it's a very different role play to what you may have done previously in your English studies. So let's get into it. So let's start talking about what the role play is in terms of the speaking section.
Formats.
So the speaking section will last 20 minutes in total. So in that time, you have 2 role plays to complete. You have 3 minutes to plan for each role play and then 5 minutes to execute each role play. Also, before the role plays begin, you will have a brief unassessed section where the examiner will simply ask you some questions about your healthcare profession and obviously what you want to do with it.
Yeah, so that will last about 2 minutes,
That will last 2 minutes.
Yeah, about 2 minutes. And that really serves as time for you to warm up, you know?
Yes.
Start talking in English, really warm up those vocal cords, make you feel comfortable, get to know your interlocutor. And also really, you should pay attention to your interlocutor's accent during that time. You know, really try to listen in on how they speak, really get used to how they speak and their accent so that then you'll be familiar with them as you're going through your role plays, of course, during the assess time of your speaking.
And as we know, it's all about feeling comfortable on the day as well. Yeah. So that's a way for you to simply, as Una said, get used to the interlocutor's accent. They get used to your accent, pick up some speaking speeds, get into a nice rhythm, feel comfortable, and also just feeling relaxed as well. Hopefully the interlocutor will make you feel easy and ready to go for the assess part. Yeah, of course.
And you want to go in, you know, greet your interlocutor nicely and just overall seem like a confident person and set a good tone for how your speaking is going to continue. And try to speak a lot during that time as well. You know, get lots of speaking in so that you can really, get used to speaking in English.
But of course, that comes secondary to the actual assess part, which is your 5-minute speaking role play. So the role plays themselves are actually designed to replicate real life medical situations in which you are obviously trying to comfort a patient in regards to some sort of medical issue they have. So regardless if you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you are a physiotherapist, you are a pharmacist, etc., you are going to be giving some advice to a patient. So you might have to console them, you might have to make them feel less angry, you might have to make them feel more comfortable, or even just reassure them as well.
Yeah.
So that's what's different about OET, in that obviously language skills are very important for this and how you use the language, but also you're being assessed on your communication skills in a given medical context as well. So that's why the criteria that we're going to go into now as well reflects upon both sets of those sets of criteria. Your linguistic skills as well as your communication criteria.
Yeah, definitely.
As well.
And we'll get into that. But that's just a good point. You know, although this is not a reality, like this situation is not reality.
Oh, yeah, of course.
It is simulating realistic experiences, which of course our doctors and nurses and medical professionals may have experienced in their own workplace, in their own daily life, in their own language, and now they have to do it in English. So yeah, try and, you're going to be drawing upon your work experience as well.
Precisely.
Very much so in relation to this conversation.
You can use that when moving forward as well. Hopefully you've gone through similar experiences before. Just do what you've done in your previous experience in terms of your communication, as well as obviously your experience that you picked up training for OET as well, to just basically do as well on this role play as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And you have to show your language and communication skills. So let's get into that now then, Scott, shall we?
Let's get into the criteria. Okay. So you are assessed on 9 different criterions. 4 are for linguistic criteria and 5 are for your communication skills criteria. So for the communication criteria, you are scored from 0 to 3 for these.
0 to 3
So the
each.
communication criteria are the following. We have your relationship building. So how good are you at establishing rapport and conversation with the patient?
So it's referring to the opening of your conversation, how you open the conversation, and the empathy that you display throughout that conversation with the patient.
Precisely.
And the language that you use in order to convey your empathy. Yeah.
Then we have your understanding and incorporating. Basically, how good are you at listening to your patient and providing them comfort throughout it as well? So once again, drawing on your ability to empathize with the patient.
And how fully you involve that patient in the conversation.
Very good.
Very good.
Then we have providing structures. So how well simply are you at organizing your thoughts and your process of making this patient feel good and providing care for them? Obviously, do you start with a greeting? Do you ask them relevant questions? Do you then offer suggestions for treatment and then give them a diagnosis before giving them the options for them to live?
Very good.
Simply.
And how you introduce new topics. You know, how you really, as you say, structure your conversation to make it easy, have a good impact on your patient. Yeah. And then we have our information gathering. So then what kind of questions do you ask in order to gather the information that you need to respond to the patient?
Not only are your questions appropriate, but also more importantly, are they open as well, taking into account the many different aspects that the patient wants to answer with, which is important.
Definitely. And then, of course, when you have information gathering,
you have information giving as well. So not only, of course, are you asking the appropriate questions, listening to the responses, but then giving the appropriate information to diagnose and treat the ailment which the patient has come from.
Yeah, the impact of how you provide that information on your patient is very important there, and overall make them comfortable and understanding of the information you are giving to them.
So the clinical communication criteria, as you've seen by how we've outlined it, this should pretty much follow what you've been doing in your own healthcare profession before you've come. Now let's go on to the linguistic criteria, which are assessed on a different scale of 0 to 6 points for each of these. This is basically your ability to use your English language skills.
Yes, and there are 4 of those linguistic criteria. Okay, so the first is intelligibility. So that's really referring to your pronunciation, your accent, and your intonation. So how well you can be understood by, of course, your interlocutor, who is, of course, acting as the patient. Yeah, so think of it all. How can you say the sounds of the English language? Do you struggle with any sounds? Is that affecting your overall pronunciation? What kind of an impact does your accent have on your English speaking? What kind of impact does your first language have on your English speaking and the sounds that you make in that? Are you able to be understood?
Precisely.
And your intonation. So that's referring to the rise and fall of your voice. You know, do you speak in that robotic tone, or are you speaking nice, going up and down, stressing the correct words
and of course,
syllables?
Changing your tone is highly essential for your effective communication. So we know that.
Exactly.
Then we have your fluency, which of course is standard across many English language examinations. Basically, how smooth can you speak, how constant can you speak, and how much can you speak without having any unnecessary repetition, breakdowns, false starts, hesitations, in which communication may break down overall. So you want to make sure that you're speaking in a nice, consistent pace throughout.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, and then we have also the speed. Did you refer to the speed as well?
Nice and consistent.
Yeah, making sure that your pace is quite a natural pace, smooth and flowing. And just generally, how easy is it for the listener to understand you and sort of enjoy how you speak? And then we go to appropriateness of language. So that is, of course, referring to the language, the tone, and professionalism of your listener's understanding.
Yeah, so are you sounding like a doctor? Are you sounding like a nurse? Are you sounding like a pharmacist? So obviously you don't want to be overtly formal, like you're obviously doing some sort of academic speech. That's not how
or like you're speaking to another doctor.
Or like you're speaking to another doctor as well. You don't want to be super informal as well, where you're using lots of colloquialisms, contractions as well. You want to be somewhere in the middle, an appropriate way where you're equally professional, but also trying to instill support, understanding, and empathy for your listener.
Very good. Okay, and then the last one, of course, is your resources of grammar and expression. So the impact of your grammatical accuracy and your word choice on your listener's understanding. So, are you using correct grammar? How many errors do you make throughout your speech? Is that affecting the meaning of what you were saying? Is your word choice correct? Is that affecting the meaning of what you're saying? How well can your listener understand you?
Yeah, precisely.
Very good. So those are our criteria then for your speaking exam. So there is a lot to consider, and it's really important before you go into your exam, of course, and that you get lots of practice and that you really understand the criteria. That you really understand what it is you are being marked on, because that way you can improve upon any weaknesses that you may have and look at each of these criteria in detail and make sure that you are getting the score that you need.
And of course, listening to these criteria in the podcast today will simply only be an overview for you, but we recommend that you really understand this criteria so that, as Una said, you can understand exactly what you're being scored on, find out your weaknesses, also find out your strengths as well, and then see that you're consistently improving.
Exactly, and you can find this criteria on the OET website.
On the OET website, very easy to find.
And it's easy to access, so make sure that, I would almost say, stick that on the wall, like make that your go-to, you know the criteria, you know what you're being assessed on, what you need to improve upon.
All right, so that's the criteria done. Now let's just have a look through exactly what you'll be doing on the day of the role play in terms of the role play structure, as well as your method as well. So we're going to go through some tips that you can use on the day to hopefully maximize your effectiveness in delivering those role plays.
Okay.
So the first thing that we should consider, of course, is thinking about how you're going to demonstrate your language skills on the day of the OET examination. Remember, of course, you have the clinical communication criteria, but this is an English language test. So therefore, you need to make sure that obviously your fluency skills, your appropriateness of language, your grammatical range and accuracy, and your lexical resource in terms of the vocabulary use are up to scratch on the day. Remember that, of course, you will be a bit nervous. That is totally fine to feel nervous. But you want to make sure that your fluency is key. You're speaking at a nice, natural pace. You're not using hesitations or false starts. You're not breaking down your language. You're not being overtly apologetic to the examiner as well, which I've experienced before. Sorry, I'm not sure if I can do this. I'm sorry if I'm starting. Don't worry about that there. The examiner will try their best for you overall. So that's why it's important for you to make sure that you are doing that.
Definitely. Really good advice there. So that's obviously referring to your speaking skills in general, isn't it? Just like always taking every opportunity, whether it's medical or not, to be practicing your grammar when you speak. Definitely. That's a really good tip. Get a study buddy. Make sure that you are practicing speaking at all times.
All right. So the first thing you'll do in the day, of course, is you will plan for your role play. So you're going to have 3 minutes to look at the case notes, and what you want to do in that time is just take out the essential information. So obviously, what's your role? What is the patient? How old are they? How do they feel? What are their ailments? How are you supposed to express yourself as well?
Definitely. Are you struggling with your OET exam preparation?
Are you unsure how to reach your target score of a grade A or B? Let Swoosh English help you get there.
Go to www.swooshenglish.com or click the link in the description for your free OET Complete Guide to Writing.
Everything you need to know to pass your OET writing step by step. Go to www.swooshenglish.com or click on the link in the description below.
Yeah, so making sure that you're looking at those notes and you have the 3 minutes to do that. So also taking some notes as you're doing it. You're going to have those aspects that you're going to have to cover. You're going to have to find out particular information. So take down some notes on exactly what it is you have to do and highlight some words.
Yeah, because there might be some information that you find is more necessary and areas of questioning that you want to go into. For example, they're giving you the condition that they have, and you obviously want to ask more questions about when it started, how they feel, etc. As well as just ask them some general empathetic questions about how they feel about it as well. You want to take this all into consideration when you are doing your role play. So as Una said, taking down notes is quite essential so that you obviously are able to organize yourself on the day without having to read through the notes consistently and therefore taking away from your ability to speak and demonstrate your fluency.
You definitely want to avoid, keeping your eyes on that piece of paper. You want to make sure that you are maintaining eye contact.
Very important.
Eye contact with the interlocutor, who is of course acting as your patient. That is going to go a long way to making them feel comfortable, isn't it? So eye contact is very important. So yeah, that is your preparing. Do you have any other points you would like to make in relation to how the student should prepare? Especially given that you have been an interlocutor for some OET exams before.
I think the students really should just highlight the words that they think are very important, highlight the key terms, and even brainstorm some questions as well. Think about ways that they can ask questions and also answer questions on the day. And think about structure as well. Think about how you can open your conversation, how you can ask your relevant questions, diagnose the condition, offer your treatment options, give some closure, and then hopefully make sure the patient is feeling pretty comfortable with it.
Yeah, and it's really important as you go through it as well to consider the kind of questions that you're going to ask, isn't it? So that you need to make sure that you're asking open-ended questions as well, so that the patient, if you ask lots of closed questions like, is that okay, or do you understand?
I would start off by asking open-ended questions first, and then obviously hammering in on any information where there may be some gaps in with closed questions at the end. Start off with nice open-ended questions.
Yeah, it makes the person feel more comfortable, like they can, they have to give an answer rather than just yes, no.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into now the actual delivery of your spoken response. Una, what's the first thing that you should do when it's your time to start your 5-minute role play?
So of course you should really give a good opening. You want to make the patient feel really comfortable. So opening the conversation is really important. Like good morning, good afternoon. You want to have a very friendly delivery. Make your patient feel comfortable.
Remember, this should be exactly like a real medical dialogue in which you are actually dealing with a live patient on the day of a medical examination or a query, for example. So you want to replicate that as much as possible. Yeah. This person is going to feel nervous. They're going to feel maybe a bit scared, upset, or anxious to know what their issue is. So make them feel at ease by good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Mr., Miss, Mrs., etc., and smile with them. How are you today?
Yeah. Positive communication.
And smile as well, because that obviously makes them feel much warmer.
Yeah. First impressions are really important. So you want to give the first impression that you are here, you're friendly, you're professional, and you're there to help that person.
All right. So then obviously you will do the opening statement. Then the patient or the interlocutor will start giving some information about how they feel. This now goes into your information gathering stage. So now you need to start asking the relevant questions so that you can find out how the patient feels and exactly what their situation is, and therefore find out ways for you to actually give them some suggestions and treatment options based on that situation. Yeah. So this is where we recommend that you start off by asking open questions to begin with.
So that will encourage the patient to give more information if you ask those kind of open-ended questions. So that is really important. So that's not yes/no questions, okay? You want to ask open-ended questions in order to really take off your information gathering and satisfy that criteria.
All right. And of course, when the patient is given the information, should you be completely mute and not say anything?
No, of course, give some sort of verbal feedback as well, right?
And what purpose might that have?
So it makes them feel comfortable. It makes them it makes them think, okay, this person is actually listening to me, not that they've just like switched off and gone into another planet.
Yeah. So, but is it also important, do you think, just to give constant yes, I see, no.
That could also make the person feel like, oh, right, they're just saying that, they're not actually listening, but perhaps repeat certain sentences that they've said, confirm information, repeat it back to them. Because then they can really be sure that you are actually listening to them.
So you obviously
repeat back what you've said.
So yes, it is essential that you obviously listen to the patient or the interlocutor, give the information as well. So obviously you can give a diagnosis, but also they're probably going to come across as a bit emotional at times. They might obviously show fear about their condition, about maybe the expense of it, about maybe how it's going to affect other people in their lives as well. So it's important then to also respond in an empathetic nature as well.
So give feedback like, really? Oh, that must be difficult.
I understand where you feel. And obviously it's important to change your tone as well. Don't say, I understand how you feel, like a robot. I understand how you feel. Oh, really? I'm sorry to hear that. That must be hard. Yeah. Things like that. Because obviously you're being assessed also on your ability to offer responsive empathy as well.
Empathy, very important. Yes, show that you're listening, that you're understanding, and give them feedback in relation to that.
All right, so you've begun your first stage of information gathering. You've diagnosed the condition. Now you obviously want to give your response to the treatment options that the patient may have. So that's why it's important now also to offer it in a nice structured manner. So this is where using sequencing phrases such as firstly, after that, then, next, etc.
Exactly. So you want to make it really nice and clear and easy for your patient to follow.
To understand.
They are not used to these kind of medical conversations. So you want to make it as easy for them, like you say, using your firstly and using sequencing phrases to make sure that they can follow along nicely.
Yeah.
And that's really important with your organization and the structure of your speaking.
Yeah, and it's no harm also just to confirm that they know what you mean as well by asking statements such as, if you obviously don't want to ask open questions such as, is that okay? Because they might just say, oh yes, I understand. But asking open questions about any of the conditions that they may have so that they respond, and therefore you're actually confirming that they understand what you're talking about by getting those words out of the patient's mouth as well, because a lot of information can be given very, very quickly, and they may in a real situation not understand what you mean, so that will improve your ability to give information and respond to information as well.
Very good. So now you're probably coming to the end and you're going to start to close your conversation. So as much as a first impression is really important, also a final impression is important as well. So you want to make sure that you start to repeat information that has perhaps been said throughout that consultation. You know, is the patient clear on the information? Are they going away knowing exactly if they have steps to take, for example? Are they going away knowing what steps they have to take? Are they confident about the advice that they have been given? Are they now going to be able to put this into practice? So repeating the points that you've made throughout.
Yeah, there's no harm in giving a brief summary at the very end as well, but make it seem very natural as well when you're giving this summary. Not that it's been tacked on, is because obviously there's going to be a lot of information that's going to be given in that brief amount of time, but you want to ensure that they go away, as Una said, feeling reassured and comfortable that their ailments will be solved.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, final impression is also really important with your OET speaking.
So don't forget to obviously close the conversation like you opened it by saying goodbye, wish you well.
Professional, friendly.
Nice, professional and friendly as well, like a real role play, like a real nurse or doctor or pharmacist as well. So the patient has a good closing impression too.
Very good. So shall we go through some final tips and ways that people can that our students can generally improve, things that they can work on?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Yeah.
You want to start?
So pay attention to feedback. So a lot of the time, students, like when they're preparing for OET exams, you know, when it comes to writing or speaking tasks, they just want to do speaking after speaking after speaking, like practice the things. And they don't actually consider, okay, am I taking the feedback that I've been given? Especially if you're, of course, working with a teacher, like here at Swoosh English. If you're working with a teacher, are you actually working on the feedback that you have been given? Are you going away and trying to improve, for example, if they think that your tone isn't great, or you're lacking in empathy, or your language skills, you need to work on something?
It's really emphasizing quality over quantity. And it does take time for some of the information that you're given in order to improve yourself to seep in. Also, you have to actively improve upon that as well. There's no point, obviously, reading any information that you've been given in terms of feedback and going, okay, well, now I know, without actually putting it into practice. So make sure you do actually dedicate your time to that feedback and making those improvements, and not simply just doing mock test after mock test after mock test.
And reflecting upon it. Yeah, reflecting upon it is
yes.
so important. And it's the only way you're going to really achieve those high marks, you know, in your OET exams. So yeah, use lots of learning strategies to help you improve. For example, if you are struggling with your vocabulary, one big thing that you can do is every time you read something, you listen to something, or you speak to someone who uses a new word, you know, write that word down, make vocabulary lists, have a dedicated OET mini dictionary, write down words, then write down the definition of the word and perhaps synonyms of the word so that you can widen your vocabulary even further. You know, make sure that you're actually actively reading, actively listening, and taking something from it every time.
Yeah. That's precisely what we recommend for every examination, and it's also very important for OET as well, given there's going to be a lot of medical jargon you may come across as well.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to have a good understanding of the terms that you may come across. Obviously, you're going to be practicing as your relevant profession, so you should have a good knowledge of the medical language. But there probably was something you may come across eventually, whether it's obviously clinical or maybe it's more linguistic criteria in terms of the words. So make that dictionary.
And also your pronunciation, perhaps you're having difficulties with that. Make sure that you then go over the sound that you're struggling with, find lots of words with that sound in it, and practice. Record yourself saying this sound and then listen back. Are you still saying it incorrectly? And really work on your pronunciation. So what other tips do we have then?
We're just making use of that preparation time effectively. So you want to ensure that you've read the card carefully, you've extracted that information, and you're prepared to go into the role play with the 5 minutes. So you're not really focusing on collecting the information at that point, but actually delivering it effectively. So there's some following questions that you can think about regarding the role play itself. Think about obviously who the patient or the caregiver is. You want to obviously make sure that you are going to be speaking to them effectively depending on their age, their gender, and their background as well.
Some of the first things to note, right?
As well as how they may feel about the given treatment. Think about also what is the medical complaint. You need to diagnose what that is, how long they have been suffering with it for, also what treatment are they requesting. Are they likely to offer any resistance to the course of action you recommend based on that information about their age, their suffering, their gender as well, so that you can obviously mitigate any of the negativity that might come, or maybe the frustration or resentment they might have towards their condition. And also, how do you plan to deal with that? Obviously, can you show empathy? Are you need to be a bit firm with them, or do you also have to just lay out the information on the table with them and make them feel as easy as possible about any bad news that they're about to get. Finally, is it important that you're ready to address any difficulties or sensitivities the patient may present as well? So you want to make sure that you're going to communicate with them effectively depending on how they feel and their ailments as well.
Very good. Okay, great. So just make sure that you get lots of practice in. Of course, one of the best ways to do that is to have a teacher, an OET teacher, and a language skills expert who can really help you improve your language skills and make you feel comfortable with the format of the OET exam.
All right. Well, we hope that you have gotten some really useful information about the OET speaking examination from this podcast. So hopefully take all this on board. Remember though that you will need to put in your own work, understand the criteria and also the methods for the speaking test overall. We at Swoosh English can help you with that. So if you're doing the speaking test anytime soon, we wish you the best of luck. If you're wanting preparation, you know who to come to. So thanks a lot for watching today, and we'll see you again.
Thanks guys. Bye-bye.